Welcome, welcome. I think I'm live now. Welcome back to Una's Sanity Corner. And how are you? How are you this last week of February, Monday? If you're in England, you might be quite excited about the news about March the 8th and going back to school. We're certainly a little bit excited here. Some years ago, I was working with a mum and she came on to one of our calls and she said, yeah, things are going better now. It's kind of, we're more in flows. It feels easier. I'm not doing a whole lot of the things that I was doing before. In fact, Una, she said, I've written myself a not to do list, things I don't need to do anymore. And that was when I realized that one of the secrets of a happier family is not doing a whole lot of things that we feel we should be doing. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a not to do list like this mum had, a list of 8 things you can literally strike off your to do list and feel how much easier it feels to be a parent without these things. Okay, so I'm going to dive straight in. Number one is you actually, as a parent, don't need to correct your children, point out where they're wrong, or point out where they are, where their behavior is unacceptable. Tell them off, basically, right? We don't need to tell them off. Now, I know this feels like, I know, really, like I do know this feels like one of the core duties of a responsible parent, right? That we point out where children have gone wrong, that we teach them right from wrong, and all that. But there is a problem with this approach. And that is that when we do this in the normal way, we very often end up making children feel wrong. And when children feel wrong, they feel bad, and then that sets up the next cycle of behavior that we actually don't want. So, what can we do instead? Instead, we can stop the behavior, of course, point out the consequences of it. Do you see? He's angry because you took that. And then talk with children, either in that moment or at a later moment, about why that behavior came up. Go upstream with them. If children do something, show some unwanted behavior, there's always a need in there. There's always a difficult feeling. And that's where I encourage you to focus your attention. Okay, number two, connection is so much more powerful than correction. And number two is this: you don't have to make your children happy all the time. Of course, we want them to be happy. We want them to have a great life and so on. And I know you're doing loads of things, to help them be happy. But it's really important really helpful to understand that we don't need to make them happy all the time. We can't make them happy all the time. And one of the reasons for this is that when we try to make them happy all the time, it can make them really, really cranky because they get the message from us subtly, we may not actually say it, that they should be happy all the time, right? And I remember talking to a client once, and her son was getting upset quite regularly, more or less every morning, or every morning he went to nursery when she was getting him ready because he didn't really want to go to nursery. He'd rather stay at home, right? And so I said to her at a certain point, you don't need to make him happy all the time. It's all right if he's unhappy about getting ready, getting dressed for nursery. And when I said that, I could see something, like a big paradigm shift happening right in front of my eyes. And also a huge sense of relief wafting over her. And, she kind of hadn't thought about it in those terms before. And when I talked to her 2 weeks later, she said, that was really, that really changed my whole outlook when you said that about not having to make him happy all the time. And the amazing thing is, she said, since I've let go of that, he's much calmer and happier when we get dressed in the morning for nursery. So instead of feeling you need to make your children happy all the time, if that does come up, that feeling, that upset over your child's upset, look after yourself. Take a moment to look after your needs, either in that moment or, notice that if your child's upset is affecting the way you're feeling, then that's time to double down on your self-care. Take a rest, ask your partner if you can for a break, have a sip of water, whatever it is. Okay, number 3 that you don't need to do, and this is a big one. I've bundled a whole number of things here together. You don't need to be right. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be always, a model of composure for your children. Basically, you're human, and you can give yourself permission to be human in the family too. And why is this so important? It's so important because it's real, right? It's real to be human. It's not real to expect ourselves to be perfect, and it just puts pressure on us. And as we know these days, when we're feeling something like we're feeling under pressure, we transfer those feelings onto those around us. This is to do with the science of mirror neurons. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I understand enough of it to know that our feelings are echoed, they like reverberate in those around us. So by giving yourself permission to get it wrong, be imperfect, you also give your whole family permission, your children permission to get it wrong, be imperfect. And this creates a much more relaxed atmosphere. Okay, so number 4. This is a big one because this is something we really feel we ought to be doing. And it's this: you don't need to make everything fair for your children. Now, why? The reason why, well, one of them is because it's actually impossible. It's impossible to kind of go far enough back into the past to work out, the beginning of where this whole dynamic was set up. For example, it's totally unfair on the first child, the prince or the princess of the family, to have their crown removed when the second child comes along and takes 90% of the parents' attention, at least for the first, months, but also for a long time. And so yeah. So what's more, I find much more helpful to create harmony, to create a sense of well-being in the family, rather than making things fair, is to help everyone feel better. Just help the children feel better. When they that cry, it's not fair. What's often at the core of that is not so much about fairness, which is more of a construct, but it's about feeling somehow lost or left out or unloved in some way. So address that feeling, and you'll have more success. And also because with fairness you can be in a kind of endless cycle trying to work it out, and you're very much in your head trying to work out what's fair. Go to the heart. That's where you'll have most success, where you'll find the true well-being for your family. So number 5, this is another one. You don't need to make siblings in your family like each other or love each other. Now, it could be that you had a very special bond with one of your siblings, and you'd like your children to have that kind of special bond. Or it could be the opposite. You had a really awful, abominable relationship with one of your siblings, and you just absolutely don't want that to come up in your family. Whichever one of these it is. I get it. Yeah, I get it. And the reason why it's best not to try and make children like each other is that because our trying to engineer things, our trying to make things happen, our comments like, be nice to your sister, you love her, they put pressure, basically. They put pressure on children to behave in a certain, or to have certain feelings, right? To have certain feelings which they may or may not have access to in that moment. We don't know. Best to leave them free to have their own relationship. You know, children are like us. We don't, they have they're bound to get on better with some people than with other people. They're going to have, it's wonderful to have a special bond with siblings, but we can't make that happen. And in fact, the best way to support them to develop a really positive relationship is to step out of it and allow it to develop freely. And when I say step out of it, I mean things like, just giving them space, also mental space, not putting the pressure on, but also allowing them time apart, not making them do things, specific things for each other, giving them that freedom. And then they are more able to connect with them in their way, their unique way, which is going to be, the best for them. Okay, number 6. You don't need to banish rude words or toilet talk from your family. Okay. Why do I say this? Because it's basically impossible. You can't stop words or anything really coming out of your children's mouths. It's just not possible. It would only in theory be possible if you were going to resort to very Victorian methods, which I'm sure you don't want to be, you would feel, you don't want to use. If you're watching this video, you won't be wanting to use these kind of methods. And so the best thing is, instead, is just to not attach any attention or energy to those kind of words and that kind of talk, because children often say those things quite unconsciously. They play around with it. It's natural. They find it hilarious. But if you don't attach attention to it, it will just dissipate. I remember a wonderful story from a teacher I once knew, who had a class of 6-year-olds, and the boys at a certain point thought it was hilarious to get out their water bottles, stick them to their crotch, and walk around the classroom talking about their penises. Now, she let that go for a couple of days or so on. She was wise enough not to try and kind of stamp it out. But then at a certain moment, I think it was the 3rd day, she kind of just said to them, "Oh, you and your penises," in this quite light-hearted way. And when she said that, they saw that she was cool with it, and they just kind of quickly put away their water bottles, and it was never heard of again. So be cool with it. Be cool with it, okay? Number 7, make children say sorry. Yes, I don't think there's any value in a forced apology, okay? It's quite hollow. It makes the one who's done the wrong thing feel really wrong, and it makes the one who's getting the apology feel kind of slightly elevated. And this isn't the dynamic you want to really create, because that sets up the problem for the next the next kind of incident between these two. Rather, help them both feel better, help them feel, go to the heart again, help them both feel acknowledged in the wrong that was done to them, or the reason why they did that wrong, because usually things are more complicated. It's not usually victim perpetrator, is it? As you know, the one who gets it's so I won't go say too much more about that, but what can you do instead? Instead, model apologizing. That's so powerful. We get things wrong. We get things wrong, and we can model apologizing. And that way we can teach apology, real apology. And that's what we want children to learn, to learn that it's helpful to be self-reflective. It's helpful to be able to repair things, and that we can do by modeling. Okay, and number 8, this is the final one. You don't need to have too many rules in the family. Yes, it's good to have a few safety rules, but I wouldn't kind of go overboard on the rules. Now, why do I say this? The one important reason I say this is that the rules won't do the work for you. We often think, if we set up a rule in the family, well, then that's it. But actually, it's very far from the truth, as you may have found out, because children, once they know a rule, they may understand it, intellectually, but they won't necessarily remember it or feel inclined to follow it in the moment. They'll still need loads of support. So rules can just create a lot of mental clutter or opportunities for children to get things wrong. So I would rather, emphasize understanding your children. Why do things come up at certain times? And understand, be curious about what needs your child is expressing by certain behaviors. Then talk to them about that. That's much more effective than imposing a new rule. So I hope these were helpful. I hope, you feel what I want you to feel here is that, that that these are things you don't need to do. You can let go of lots of shoulds, and that you can enter a kind of a more heart-centered, a freer way of being with your children. Okay, so I hope that it felt like that for you. And if you'd like to, understand this more deeply, how it applies to you, and uncover the deeper reasons for your child's behavior or your children's behavior, you are very much invited to apply for one of my free calls that I issue every month, and we can hop onto a Zoom video call and talk through what's happening with your child's behavior, what the reasons might be for it, and a happier way forward that's based on everything that I've spoken about today, connection rather than correction. And that you can do on my website at unaalexander.co.uk/let's talk, or just send me a private message. You can do that too. So I hope this has been helpful. If it has, do let me know, leave a comment, leave a heart, and lots of love to you. Bye.